at some point we'll work on all of the skills. They all come into all sorts of tasks in different ways. And this session, I like sessions when they have a really neat story arc, where you start off and I get to do things and then it all neatly collects into a final kind of, this is the finished product. Lessons are great when they're like that as well. The speaking session isn't quite like that, it's kind of more like a succession of small things you need to know that don't fit together in quite such a beautiful arc. But you'll see what happens, it's very interesting. And what it does do is feed fairly directly into, on the exam paper itself, into task 3. So at the end of this session, we'll have a quick look at the task 3. Okay, and then next week there's one of those to do as practice. Right. First of all, tell me about any speech events, there you go, with the technical right, that you've been involved in today.
Class.
Great, what did you do? What did you say? What kind of speech event was it?
I gave directions.
Gave?
Directions.
Oh, okay, fantastic. Other things, when else have you spoken already today?
In class, introductions. It was a new class, so meeting people from
Get to know each other.
Okay, any more speaking events? Spoken?
I had a chat with my roommate.
Okay.
There's a technical problem with our internet connection.
Okay. Ha! What were you going to say now?
I discussed a possible class with my boss. Rejected, finally.
Okay. Anything else? Can you come to mind? All the way here, perhaps?
We talked about the project.
Yeah, we rehearsed.
I ordered food in a restaurant.
Brilliant. Has anyone been teaching? Who's been teaching this morning? A couple of them. Hello. Okay. Did you do anything else in class apart from the getting to know?
Yeah, we did parent work and was about like discovering the rules about the school.
Were you
The
leading us
system.
through that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Speech events. We're thinking about speech events. Have you spoken to anyone today? Anything come to mind? That's not already on our list? That's possibly enough.
I was spoken to, I think, we're very good with storytelling.
You
One of
were?
our colleagues, yeah, started telling
Okay.
stories.
In a staff room kind of storytelling.
Yeah, it's
Okay. So, what I'm trying to bring out is the idea that we speak in some very different contexts and situations. In fact, I'm not so sure that yours are that different. But anyway, we do speak in some very different contexts for different purposes. And we could call all of them speech events. Some writers, when they're trying to analyse them, do call them that. And when we're thinking about them, we can divide them in different ways. Can you think of one way that you could divide these up into two groups when you look at this list of things?
There's classroom stuff and outside of the classroom.
You could, but that's not what I want.
Formal and informal.
Again, you could, but it's not what I want.
Functions maybe and
Two groups.
dialogue and monologue.
Yes. So one of them would be well, I'm going to change the terminology slightly on that and say things that are interactional and whoops, I'm going to change it so it's clearer. Personal, where you're talking directly with someone, and non-interpersonal. Have we got any non-interpersonals?
Hmm.
Can you give me an example?
Giving directions.
Well, the other person still could come back to you. We haven't, I think we haven't done that. Can you give me something? When would you be speaking but not get a response?
Leaving a message.
Just like
Could be.
speech. Give a speech.
Yes, and if you're giving a speech in a big context. I hope in class that they get to speak.
Story time.
Well, the other person's listening and they're live usually.
Yeah.
So there is a degree of interaction, even if only by the visual signals. Okay? Okay, so that's one way you could divide it into. Give me another way you could divide the things you talk about into two.
Publicly and privately.
Good idea, but don't mind.
Planned, unplanned?
Yes. Okay, so do you think there's anything in there that was planned?
That was unplanned.
Planned. I think the majority of things in there are probably
Like ordering food.
Yeah, perhaps on a very short time scale.
Probably if we put giving a speech in there and that this and that.
Then that would be planned. But also for a lot of you, I hope, the
Yeah.
presentation section of the lesson you've thought through and planned a little bit what you're going to say. Okay. Okay, and I want one more, and this time you might or might not know the words. It's another pair. So again, a different pair.
Could it be interactional transaction?
That's the one. Now, do you want to tell them what it is?
Oh, I didn't see those. I was
You just did it out of the blue. Right, looking at our list, the easiest way to explain that is probably to choose which ones do you think. Are there any that are just interactional?
It's like greeting is interaction.
Okay.
Like having a chat.
Yeah, if we cross out this bit, then that one's
No.
interactional. So interactional is about what?
Give and take.
More like
Exchange.
Maintaining social relationships. Yeah. Whereas transactional is,
information input.
yeah, you want to achieve something, or you want to get some or give some information.
Bouncing ideas.
Okay, there's a definition. Don't worry about my vague definitions. The definition at the top of this handout that I'm about to give you. Can you take one of these? You're going to work on it together, but the easiest way to, this one, the instruction's horribly complicated. It's easier just to do the first one together. Okay? So if you all take one, we'll do the first one together, and then I'll leave you working in twos and three over here. Okay? B, giving someone directions and they stopped and asked you in the street. Where did you put directions?
Two.
Everyone's happy?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. Giving a speech to a large number of people. Where did you put that?
Three.
C. Yeah.
Three? Yeah? Cool. Brilliant. I'm doing the ones I think everyone will agree on because they're easier. How about jump down to H, giving the commentary on a football match live on TV. So you're the television commentator and the football match is live on TV. Which box do you think that belongs in?
H.
Four.
Yes, H. Where did you put it?
Eight.
I just said the
All right, Ryan.
Four.
Eight.
I go for four.
Okay. Are you doing it for social reasons?
Yes, technically.
You're relaying information.
No.
Usually. You may think they do it for the love of the game.
No, but like all the time they're talking about the age and the height and
Yeah.
the weight. And giving
I
you
think we have to go
information
with
about
transaction.
how many games
Analysis
they
of
won.
the game.
Okay,
It's like
then.
ideas.
Okay. So yeah, I think it's definitely transactional. Is it interpersonal? Can the commentator get response from the audience?
No.
That's mental.
They
It's
often
all.
have a co-commentator. That's not good. That's not
No,
good.
we're not going there. Can they plan what you're going to say?
But not in the sense of that particular.
Not really. I mean, they might have some backup information, but not probably from the moment to moment they're following them. Okay, so I think it needs to go full. Okay. Okay. Number 5, leaving a greeting. Only a hello greeting on a friend's voicemail service. What number did you put it into?
7.
Which one?
The greeting on the
Yeah, you said
voicemail
7.
service.
8.
8.
Okay, is it transactional or interaction?
Interaction.
Okay, because you only said hello. You didn't tell them what time to meet you or anything, all right? Did you get an answer?
No.
So it's
No.
fabulous. So it's going to be 7 or 8. Now the problem will be whether you're the kind of person who, when they hit the answer, spontaneously leaves a greeting, or whether you think, oh my God, it's an answering machine. Put it down, think about what to say, and ring back. But if you don't do that second and much more complicated thing, then I think you need to be in number 8. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I put it in 7, personally.
Well, I was going to say, if you're the kind of person who hears the greeting and thinks, oh, I hate these, puts it down and thinks about it,
Always, yeah.
then you would be right to put it in 7 in that case. Okay. What about, where have I got to? That's a tricky one. How about, let's do flirting with people if you've read too many self-help websites. That-
Put that in 5.
Where did you put F?
7.
5.
F?
Okay, so we're all agreed it's interactional.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Honey.
If you're doing it, if you're flirting with somebody, is it personal or non-interpersonal?
Interpersonal.
Okay, it's going to be, they're there, believe me. Well, I know, new technologies and all that, but can we just think about
Yeah.
everyday life for a moment? So it's going to be 5 or 6. Planned or unplanned?
Well, in this case, planned because you got a lot of self-help.
That's what I was trying to get you to say. You know, people who worry very badly about what they're going to say and then read too much the wrong kind of advice. So I was thinking they may have planned. Okay, we are now into very messy examples, and you're quite welcome to totally disagree with me. What have we missed?
G.
Proposing a language.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, proposing marriage and making a personal video.
So F is 5.
Well, I put F into 5, but it's not a perfect one. You could argue it somewhere else, perhaps. But the 2 that are really dodgy examples, and I would be very grateful if you can think of one that fits better. But these were the best I could do. I got proposing marriage and making a personal video for a dating agency.
Now, proposing marriage, I put that in 1.
Did anyone else put it in 1?
No.
Yeah, I put it in 1 as well, but you can make lots of arguments, and people do sometimes, about stories. Does anyone want to explain why they put it somewhere else?
I put it in proposing marriage. I put in. Oh, yeah, I tried that.
5. It's
Oh, I put it in 6
Why?
6.
because it is interactional. It is interpersonal. And you never know, there's so many ways that I've seen too many go wrong.
Because exactly, I can hear someone else somewhere saying, I would never do that if I hadn't planned it.
You
Or they never go as planned, or something always happens.
Okay,
And you bought a ring probably.
My
You buy a ring.
intention-
You can't just propose marriage without a ring. That's-
Yes, you can.
Okay, this is about life, not about ELT. I designed it to fit into number 1. Clearly, it's a very messy example, and I designed the personal video for the dating agency because of the non-interpersonal and plan thing to fit into number 7, but they are both actually really rather messy examples. If you think my
Is it
example...
transactional?
If you think my example is incredible, give me one that works better. That could be your extra little task for the week.
Is it not about maintaining social?
Yeah, no, enough. What I needed you to do, and you have done, is work with the idea that we can look at events in different ways and that they have different features and use the terms and commit. You've done that. Now, if you don't like my examples, I completely accept some of them not good.
Okay.
Your extra task for the week is to come up with one that nobody will argue about the next time I run a Delta Module 1 course. Okay. Okay. Speaking, lots of different things involved. In your 2, turn one of those photocopies over and make me a list of the things you need to know or be able to do in order to be able to hold a conversation with another person. Give me one example. Okay.
Vocabulary.
Okay, you need enough words to give the message that you want to, is one thing. Make a list of about 7 or 8 things that you need to either know or be able to do to have a conversation with another person. Very short. What have you got that I haven't got, what have I got that you haven't got? Okay? This bit of the chart, I want one thing we can call all of this, a technical term. 2 words.
Linguistic competence.
Fabulous. You may have heard it, but not really needed to use it. Or I find often it's things I've read and then not used it myself. Okay, so if this is linguistic competence, what's this?
Register.
Is part of it.
Cultural orientation. Sociolinguistics.
Sociolinguistics competence.
We were more interested in
Okay. Now, often students have bits missing here. They have a bit of a struggle here. Or even we do at times. On a bad day, you realise you've got halfway through a sentence and you can't remember the word. You know it. What do you do then? What do you use? There's another one. There's another one for this list.
Discourse something.
This is another X. So I haven't got quite enough of this.
Strategic competence.
Fabulous. And we're going to look at that in a second. But if you've got all 3 of these combined, and you're right, some writers add separately discourse. Competence, others include it in here. Okay, it kind of depends on who you read. But I haven't taken, you've got enough for 3 for the moment. But if you put them all together, what's this one?
Conversational.
Communicative.
Exactly. Communicative.
Competence.
Fantastic. Have you heard that at some point?
Communicative approach.
And
Well,
That's different.
They're all connected.
Delphines.
sorry?
Delphines.
Okay, yes. Fabulous. Right, we're going to go back to this one briefly. That's what I meant about this session being lots of bits which are connected, but they don't really make a huge story arc. But you need them all. All right. Strategic competence. So when you haven't quite got the language you need to do the job, what do you do? In your 2, I've got the names of things and then either an example or a definition that matches up. Okay? So in your 2, can you match them up? When you were saying L1 or L2, there's things that we all do, but possibly that learners do a bit more because they're struggling a bit more with the linguistic competence. So one reason, because if you think about, when you look at the flowchart, all the things we do when we speak, all the things that need to be happening simultaneously in real time for us to be able to make sense as we speak, it's nothing short of a small miracle that we manage it. But we use lots of things that we might not necessarily notice, one of which are these strategies that you've just matched up. Another thing that people don't always notice, and students really often don't notice, and course books don't always help them with, is the fact that spoken grammar and written grammar are actually significantly different. And what we're going to do now, can you do? Come in. What we're going to do now is look at some of those differences. And that's okay. I'm going to give you some real speech properly scripted, ordinary, everyday chat, where somebody's sat and written it all out. Have a look at it and find 5 things in this dialogue that you think are characteristic of spoken language. That if you were writing to somebody, if you were writing an email to, in a reasonably semi-formal context, you wouldn't see written down. So try and find 5 things that are characteristic in grammar terms of spoken language. Tell me one thing. Can I hear one thing?
Pillars?
Which ones do you think?
Um,
Okay, and what do you mean by filler?
Well, you don't know what to say, so you go ahead.
Okay, you may be still thinking yes.
So it's
fine.
any problem.
Okay, there are quite a lot of kind of indeterminate little noises in here, and we don't really know whether they're filling, which is when you're trying to hold your place, or whether they're back channeling and showing the other person they're still listening, or what
Exactly.
they're asking for someone. But yes, there are quite a few of those
Fillers.
indeterminate words. I don't know what to call them. Okay, it's difficult to be sure to put a label on them unless you're sure of what the person's doing. Some of this conversation is so informal that you're not really. Okay, but good. Tell me one thing you saw.
Exclamation.
Exclamations, but there's another word for that, yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
interjections,
Oh.
yes. Okay. I think perhaps you do call them
Interjections.
interjections. Again, just shouting in. All right. Anything else, you two?
Interruption.
Yes.
Well,
It's not always easy to see, but with some of these signs, mean that's where someone's cutting into someone else or talking over someone else. All right. Anything else?
Tenses are messed up.
Could you say more?
I don't know. The sequence of tenses doesn't seem to be logical. I mean, if in a written text it wouldn't look like that.
Yes. It's quite hard to follow who's responding to who's.
Especially like in that recorded part where they said they have, we said,
And he said,
he
and
said,
then
and they said, it's like, we said what?
Yes. Okay. Absolutely fine. So we're not at all sure what clauses connect to or who's involved with pronouns. All right. You do anything?
Self-correction.
Yes, that
People
happens.
say, oh no, he changed his mind and he said it's on new panel, you can't
Yeah.
do this.
Absolutely, we do that quite a lot. Unfinished utterances, self-correction, repetition, something you said right at the beginning. didn't you? So there's lots of things that happen in spoken language that you wouldn't normally see in written language. Yeah? And it's one of the reasons it's easier to keep going in real time. And actually most of the time sound reasonably coherent, I hope. We hope. Okay. Not necessarily things from here, but can you find, I've got here a little list of 3 or 4 more things which are fairly classic in spoken language and which you wouldn't expect to see in written text, but just from your heads. Can you add a couple more things to your list? Just have another minute or 2. Can you add a couple more things from your head that are features of spoken language but you wouldn't normally see in written language? All right? On the top bit of the key is what we just talked about, whole class feedback, right? Things in the dialogue itself. But in this middle bit are these extra features, these classic features of spoken language. Read through those. I think you'll go, oh yeah, okay. And maybe 1 or 2 people will be saying, is that, and you can explain to each other. If you get stuck and you don't know what something is, call me and I'll help. All right? And if you finish quickly and look around and everyone else is still talking, there's a question to think about at the bottom. Okay. If you find it interesting, there should be an article on this week's list of things. When you go further down the middle into week topics, I've put links of things that are interesting or build on whatever's in the sessions in there. And there's an article by Ron Carter. Carter works at Nottingham University, and Nottingham University and Cambridge University Press together built the first spoken corpus. Now quite a few places have spoken corpora, where they've collected lots of spoken language, put it into computers so that they can data mine it and work out what people really do, as opposed to what we thought they were doing. And he's written about the features of spoken language. It's quite short and I think really interesting article that a lot of this is based on.
Is that corpus linguistics?
this part of corpus linguistics. Corpus linguistics, there's the written side and the spoken side. The first place in the early 1980s, it was co-built, and the Birmingham University and Collins built the first ever corpus. But since then, lots of places have developed their own corpuses for various purposes. And this Carter and Nottingham University have quite a famous one in Cancode, in that it's got spoken language in it. Because for a while, they put text into computers, and then they realised that they needed to look at what we were saying as well, because that's a lot more complicated to put in and decode and analyse. But there are a variety of places doing that. So he works on this kind of thing. And because he's discovered that the language we speak is actually substantially different, perhaps from what we thought it was when we were just making assumptions, he's quite a passionate advocate of teaching some of this, particularly at higher levels. Did you see the little bit in the middle about head, body, and body, tail? Which when you listen to English people talking, you think, oh yes, we do that. In fact, I've just done it. Anyway, but have you ever seen it in a course book?
No.
But have your learners got enough to cope with as it is? Do they need to be able to do it? Can you see that these are quite interesting questions?
Yeah.
And that most course book spoken language is actually cleaned up. It has come up once. I don't know if you've got a bit more familiar with what's in the two papers yet, but in paper 2, task 3, there's always quite a big question about something that's, and they say an issue, but they mean an issue, they don't mean a problem issue, it just means something that people disagree about or talk about or needs to be thought about. And there was a question a couple of years ago about cleaned up language and spoken English, and whether we should be cleaning it up or not. Because sometimes if you clean the language up for the course book, you take out some of the things that make it easy. What have we been saying? The grammar is simpler, it's dropped, we repeat things a lot in everyday conversation. But if you take all of that out, you're actually asking learners to process a much more direct thing. They have no repetition to help them, for example. So sometimes it can help, and you can see why people do it, but in fact, in other ways, it's not always actually that simple. So it's an interesting area to think about. Things to think about. Meanwhile, we're going to carry on to another. Do you see what I mean about little bits? Apologies, they're just all little bits that relate to speaking. Okay, my next little bit. So back to that same thing. How come we can do something this complex in real time, and most of the time we manage to understand each other or get the job done that we wanted done, or it really is quite impressive. We're using lots of things. Remember, we're using strategic competence to back us up. If I suddenly realise I'm in the wrong tense at the end of my sentence, I just change things around, or I circumlocute when I haven't got a word. We're using spoken grammar, so it's actually not as dense. I'm not using subordinate clauses probably as I speak. I'm just using equal weight ideas. Another thing that we do, there's another thing we do that saves us vast amounts of processing capacity when we're operating in real-time speech. I'm going to give you some examples of it. And they're in groups. Can you name the groups? And then you'll see what I mean. All right? What did you say? Good. What's the second group?
Making offers.
Yeah, okay. Offering, absolutely. Third group, C.
Segue.
Change
Yes, change the subject, you could say that. Okay. What about D? Response to what?
Thanks. Compliments.
Yes. Responding to a compliment.
Appreciation.
Responding to a compliment. Somebody's just paid you a compliment. You say one of those things usually.
It doesn't have to be a compliment.
It doesn't have to be.
Expressing
Do you really think so?
Yeah, do you really think so?
That mix of things together.
Oh, so that's very
That's the British American thing. Maybe a lot of Brits can't take a compliment. They have to turn it and make it. It's a cultural thing. Okay. What about E?
Asking for opinion.
Yes. I put inviting people to speak, but it's the same thing. Finally, yes. Super. Why? Why have I brought this in now? What has this got to do with operating in real time?
So knowing those functions would that you communicate.
Because what are you doing that your
You're
learners
using
are often
chunks.
better?
You're using chunks.
Yes. Are you analysing them and building them up?
Mhm.
You're using them as if they were complete, yeah? So you're using them as whole chunks. And that's one of the big differences. I don't know for you, if you teach lower level learners, a lot of the time you can see them scrambling to put things together. And they're trying to create the whole phrase every time, quite often directly translating the whole phrase every time. And it just takes so much processing power, you haven't got any left for all the other things you need to do to keep the conversation going at a reasonable speed. Yeah? So chunks of language, functional language, help a lot with the fact that we can do this as well. Yeah? Okay.
A lot of students' books now contain a lot of those prefabricated things.
Yes, yes, they do. Usually
From
it's
very
like daily life. Lewis popularised it quite a lot in the early 90s, and it's been coming in more and more ever since. Okay, there's actually a session, there are a couple of sessions on Lexis, and one of the later sessions is about chunks, phrases, collocation, and Lewis generally. Okay? So you will come back to lots of these things in different ways at different times. I'm going to think quickly about the tasks. If you look at paper 1, task 3, remember you did 1 and 2, that was terminology, that was last week. Thinking now about paper 1, task 3. Can anyone remember what happens in task? Has anyone had a look?
We present some.
Structure?
Now, was it from learners?
They give you
Students.
They give you something from a student book, and it's always a speaking or writing activity. We're going to look at speaking, one because we're going to do speaking. In fact, you'll come back to this and think about the same kinds of things for writing activities in the writing section later in the course. Okay, and so they give you an activity from a student book, and they ask you to name things the students will need to be able to do the activity. So they say, look at exercise 5, what do the students need to know or do? Remember I asked you the same, to be able to do this activity. And you need to look for things that are particular to that activity. So it's no good saying really general things that could be true for any activity. You need to look for things that work for that activity. All right? I'm going to give you one. They always give you an example. So this is the exercise from the coursebook. It tells you the level of the students at the top, that's important. And it gives you an example of the kind of thing they want you to find. In fact, it gives you 2 examples of the kinds of things. One thing to be careful about with this task is not to repeat the examples. Look at what they've chosen and don't write them in again. It can be easy to do if you're in a hurry. Okay. The other thing is look at the level. So you name something and you give an example of it. You'll see in a moment because there's some examples here that I mean by that. You get 2 marks for naming it. You get 2 marks for giving an example. Make the example fit with the activity. So don't think of a random example. It needs to fit the activity and it needs to fit the level about. So what's the quickest way to work out what language these students will need for this activity? What should you do when I give you this piece of paper?
Analyze the activity itself first.
Analyze it or?
What the rubrics they're given.
Instructions.
Do them.
Yes, and then?
Do that.
Do it.
Yes, just do it.
Do it.
Say you're A, I'm B. Now in the exam you won't be able to do that because you have to be quiet. But if you've done it in your head a few times beforehand, you'll have got more, because the quickest way to see what language you need with the speaking activity is to actually just try it. I'm A, you're B, let's go for it, yeah? So, read through the activity, check the level, look at the examples they give, then try this as the students, and then write down. You need to find 3 things. Name an example, name an example, name an example. 3 more things. They've told you 2 things, find 3 more things students would need for this activity at this level.
Got a score of 12.
Yes. If you haven't quite finished, you can choose, you can finish off and then have a look at the key afterwards, it's up to you. If it's on a new bullet point here, it's okay. But if you've got two different answers and they're on the same bullet point, I'm afraid you can't have both of them. You can only have. So these are the different areas that can be ticked. But if you've got 2 or 3 things inside one area, so don't put down things that are very, very similar. You'll see in a moment when you get to look at it. Okay? Make sure you say what it is and give the example, because you can get 2 points for each of those. Make it clear when you're writing your real answers which is which. Sometimes when you're marking these, you're looking and you do your best, and you're allowed to give points if you think you can work it out. You can't always decide if this is the example or part of the answer. The other thing,
Yes, I was like, we put down 5 points, and we were hoping like if number 2 doesn't really cut it, then number 4.
that used to be the case, but when they changed the exam in 2015, they changed a lot of the marking system. Because what had happened was that initially it worked like that, and what had happened was people had started to go to the old exams and just learn all of the things anyone could say and write all of them. Because the markers used to be told, look for correct answers to the points. Now they're told to mark the first 3. Because they don't want people to memorize stuff. And what's happening is people were memorizing and writing down 10, 6 of which have got nothing to do with the question. What they want is for you to actually look at this material, not written down every answer that you think might work. Okay, so they will only mark the first 3. So think about it carefully and don't waste time on extra safety answers. And make sure you make it clear where one answer finishes and the next one begins. Okay, so bullet points, notes, all of that's fine in this exam. Yeah? Just make it clear where answers are. What I'm going to do is give you this key, and then when you've got it in your hand, say that that's tea break time, and I'll see you back in here for articles in 15 minutes. Okay?